Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with Steve Cohen. Our special guest today is Pat Cremin. Pat is a USF alum. And Pat, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Now, Pat, you grew up in San Francisco. Is that correct? Now, we know each other for a while. Exactly where did you grow up? And what I'm really curious about is this Catholic school thing that exists, and it's kind of its own entity. Can you talk about that? Growing up in San Francisco and going to Catholic school there?
Sure. San Francisco, as you know, it's a very small city. And, when I was growing up, it was probably maybe 700,000. And you had, at the time, 3 Catholic boys' high schools: St. Ignatius, where I attended, Sacred Heart, which is now Sacred Heart Cathedral, and Reardon High School. Since I graduated, there have been mergers with other Catholic girls' schools. But in San Francisco, you're kind of defined in the Catholic community, what parish you're from, what district you're from. So actually, I was born in Southside Chicago, in the Englewood neighborhood. And in 1963, my father, he was a carpenter. We moved out to the West Coast, and we ended up in San Francisco, out in the Sunset District, which is you're familiar with. But Steve, it's near the ocean. It's in the southwest part of the city. Pretty much all residential. Not much going on there. I think our big excitement was like in 1974 when Patty Hearst and her SLA members robbed the Hibernia Bank up on Noriega Street. But so I went to Holy Grammar School. School's still going strong. I went to St. Ignatius, the Jesuit high school, and then it was just a natural thing for me to go to the Jesuit college at USF, and then I went to law school there. But getting back to what I said, it was just it's a very small. It still is a very small city. It's only 49 square miles. It's not like New York or Chicago, where I live now, where it's I think it's 28 miles long. I think Chicago is. But so they've always had a very close knit Catholic community there, be it Italian or Irish or other Slovenian or other ethnic groups there. But that was pretty much it, though. You were defined by, well, if you played sports and what grammar school you went to, what high school especially, because going on in San Francisco with the Catholic high schools. And so that's more so. And I think, as like I said, I live in Chicago, and I think I practice law here, and it's still like that too, though. Yeah, you run into a lot of lawyers at court, and when you talk to them, a lot of it is what parish you came from, what high school you went to, and depending on if you went to a rival high schools, we'd always look down on those educated by the Christian Brothers, because they were our big rivals with the Sacred Heart Cathedral.
So can you talk about how did you end up choosing USF to go to school?
Well, from my high school, it was kind of a seamless transition. At the time it was all boys. It has since gone co-ed, and a lot of the boys there either went to USF or Santa Clara. I think from my class, Bill, there was maybe 40 boys from my class that went to USF. And I'll tell you what, one of the reasons why I went to USF was my brother, whom you've met before, Dan. He graduated a few years ahead of me. He was on he played on the 2-time national championship soccer teams at USF. The one year they beat Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, and the following year they beat Indiana. And I just kind of followed my brother's footsteps. And also the baseball coach, whom you met during your times at USF, passed away a few years ago, Dante Benedetti, who was the American Legion baseball coach during my high school years, and that was the summer league team. So I got to know Dante. Dante Benedetti. He's an institution, was an institution in San Francisco. He owned a new pizza restaurant down on Green Street in the North Beach Italian section in San Francisco. And everyone just loved the guy. And he was fun to play for as long as you hustled and you gave 110%. Don't mouth off to him. You'll be able to play baseball. And I played baseball at USF, and it was Division I, and we got to play against great players in my time. Von Hayes, Tom Candiotti, just to name a few. Von Hayes was Tom from St. Mary's, and Dan Gladden from Fresno State. And so for me, picking USF was pretty easy. My brother was going there, although he was playing a different sport. A bunch of my classmates from St. Ignatius were going there, and it was a good school. I was so happy that I was able to graduate from there. And also the Jesuits at St. Ignatius certainly had an influence in me attending there. They expected like 40 boys from our class to go to Santa Clara and 40 go to USF, and I was just one of those 40.
Hey, talk about going to school, USF. I can remember my first impression of being at school there. What was your first impression as you entered the campus and were walking around and getting yourself acclimated?
Sure. Well, I was very familiar with the campus because I went to a bunch of USF basketball games during my high school years, and I was waiting for Bill Cartwright to come play at USF. But and that was a big story, getting USF getting Bill to attend. There was a big recruiting coup by Bob Gaillard. He was the coach at the time. But Steve, it's a small campus. It's a small urban campus, and our baseball field for the American Legion team when I was in high school was on the campus at it was then Ulrich Field, which has since been renamed Benedetti Diamond, and for big events at my high school, for masses in particular, our masses would be held at St. Ignatius Church up on the campus, and so it was just back and forth. And then my first day at USF was it was kind of daunting. It was great to know. It was great that I knew the baseball coach, and I played baseball with some of the guys. And walking around campus, a small campus, I saw a bunch of classmates that I went to St. Ignatius with, so it made it easy. But it was still college, it was still college. I took the bus to school. I got off at Haight Street in Haight-Ashbury District and walked up Cole Street every day, walking through this Golden Gate Panhandle and up through the Western. Well, it might be Western Addition, but that was my trek every day. Was taking a bus up to school, so I commuted, and it was daunting because it introduced me to co-education, which was kind of a transition in itself because going to an all-boys high school was a little different, a big dynamic difference between going to a co-ed school and an all-boys school.
Why did you decide to live off campus?
I was at home. I was living in the Sunset District, and I just had to take one bus to school, and it was a 20-minute bus ride from my house, and so and it was just a 5 or 10 minute walk up from Haight Street up to the campus. So that was it though. And USF was they were very generous to me. I think I commuted, and I got a pretty generous financial aid or scholarship package, and I think my summer jobs pretty much covered the balance of what was owed to USF. And I think, unlike my kids, I have 5 kids. I was, believe it or not, I was debt free coming out of college. I had no debt, and
Wow.
That's a rarity now. And it's sad that it's come to that situation, but it was certainly a different time back then, for sure.
Hey, talk about your teammates and talk about just give me like a great game that you guys played, and how did you, and talk about your own game a little bit.
Well, at USF, I didn't have speed, you know. I think the joke was that if I got on first base, taking a 1 foot lead off the bag was too much for the first base coach. You know, so I never got the green light unless it was a pass ball to run the second. But so my positions were, I was a catcher, a designated hitter, and a right fielder, not an outfielder, a right fielder. And by virtue of the statistics of how many balls be hit out there. So, but I had it was no, you know, one thing was I was able to play Division I baseball, and I was able to play with a bunch of great guys, and the coach Dante Benedetti and his assistant coach Kenny Bowman, who went on to become the head coach for USF. They were great guys. They're great guys I looked up to. Uh, my most memorable game was against San Jose State, and the pitcher was a guy named Chris Cotteroli, who went on to pitch for the Oakland A's. He was one of their starters in the early '80s when I think Billy Martin overpitched most of the starting staff, and their careers all kind of ended. But Chris, I'd faced in high school. He was pitching for Midi High School, which is down in San Jose. We were all in what they call the West Catholic Athletic League. And I went into pinch hit, and he struck me out on a curveball. And so 2 years later, I get to face him again. He's pitching for San Jose State, and he's having a really good career. I think he might have been maybe the 7th pick that year in the draft. And the first time I get up against him, he strikes me on a curveball. So I said, well, I really haven't learned much in 2 years. And so so the second time I got up, he threw a fastball. I can't remember. I hit a home run over onto Masonic Avenue, and the next at bat, I got a base hit. So he ended up pitching a 3-hitter. He beat us. I think the score was like 10-1 or 10-2. But that was my most memorable baseball game, and just knowing that this guy went on to pitch. And he had a pretty good career with the Oakland A's, and I think he made a pitch for the Royals as well. I always thought, and I don't have many accomplishments in baseball, but that was one I'll always remember. And somebody from the team he's able to pick out the baseball and retrieve the baseball, so I still have it somewhere. But it won't be in the Smithsonian. No, I don't think the Smithsonian wants it, but. That's it though. But the guys in the team, they've all went on to, at USF, and Tommy Lunabus, he was a shortstop, and he went on to go to just do tremendously well in Silicon Valley, and I think he has a big position now with Accenture. And a pitcher, Vic Guanasso, he ended up becoming the chairman or the CEO of DHL for the North American operations. Most of the guys in the team, a lot of them from the Catholic schools down either in San Francisco or down the peninsula, and we just all had fun. We all had fun. We all enjoyed being as a team. And a story that Bill may not remember was, there was an overlap during the baseball and basketball seasons at USF. And so we're all in the same locker room. And at the time, the equipment manager was a guy named Bobby Duran. And Bill remembers him, great guy.
Of course.
And Bob Duran his wife would pack him these awesome lunches. I mean, not just a hamburger, not just a sandwich, but these really big, substantial sandwiches. Sometimes there's like a piece of cake in there. And so Bob offered it to me one time, and I said, "Sure, I'll eat it." And so I had this great lunch before we had baseball practice. Then the next day, Bill was there eating Bob Duran's lunch that he'd given to him that day. And so I said, I'm going to get you next time. And so it was kind of a competition to see who could get the lunches from the equipment manager, Bob Duran. So it was, the thing about USF is it's people don't know. It's kind of like, it's a small school. I mean, I think, I don't know, 5,000 undergrad, maybe less at the time when Bill and I were going there. But it wasn't a big school at all. It was kind of, like for basketball powerhouses, you'd look at something like Wake Forest, for example, in the ACC. It's a very small school as opposed to North Carolina or Duke. But it was a small school, and we always saw the players from the other teams on campus, and there's just like one thoroughfare to walk through the campus, and so you always run into people, people that you knew.
I was just going to ask you about playing catcher. Did you always play catcher? And like Bill sometimes likes the Giants, sometimes likes the A's. Did you have a player you were growing up and really liked as a catcher?
My favorite baseball player was a guy who I never saw play baseball, which was Ted Williams. And I read his autobiography. I think I was in 8th grade or something, and I just admired his dedication to becoming a great hitter. And I from the pictures I've seen or the videos I've seen, he just had such a beautiful swing. I batted left, I threw right, but that's the only similarity I had with Ted. But I Giants fan, of course. Back then, it was at Candlestick Park, which was a climactic challenge. It was always cold there, and I just remember some of the players. Willie Mays was, of course, got to see him play sort of near the end of his career. I didn't see him in his glory days when he played for the New York Giants, but the pitcher that I admired most, I think, was probably a guy named Ron Bryant, and he may have won the Cy Young Award. I can't remember, in 1971, but my buddy and I went to a baseball game. We used to get there early just to watch batting practice, and we were sophomore in high school at St. Ignatius, and we were talking to him on the sidelines before the game, and he showed us how to chew tobacco, So he pulled out a wad, and he had a couple of sticks of Wrigley's Doublemint gum or something. He wrapped it around the wad of chewing tobacco, put it in his mouth. He goes, "This is how you chew tobacco." And, yeah, sure, we were 15 years old at the time, but I don't know if our parents are happy about that, but it was great. That was my recollection of Ron Bryant, and that was maybe 72 or 73, maybe the year after he won the Cy Young Award. But at Candlestick Park it was always cold, and it was a blessing that they moved more towards the downtown area. I think it was just a bad place to watch a baseball game. Okay for football, but baseball, especially when you had a lot of night games, it was just a really cold place to play.
But you didn't shift allegiances like some people might have when the A's were winning in the 70s with Reggie Jackson, Vida Blue. Like some people seem to have.
No, they never. Even during that time, Steve, I think we were always rooting for the National League teams.
Okay.
Even though we were separated by a bridge, we just still wanted. I think they played the Mets one year. That's when Willie Mays was playing the Mets at that time, maybe 1973. And
yeah,
I think it was hard. I moved to Chicago, and I ended up becoming a Cubs fan, and which was a big challenge up until like 2016.
For sure.
When they won the World Series, and it's funny, when I moved to Chicago, I just realized that I think my first night game I went to was down at Comiskey Park. And it was in the middle of summer. It was like 80 degrees. And when the game ended like 10:30, I was walking out of the park with my shorts on, going, "Wow, this is baseball." Watching a night game, instead of freezing and buying hot chocolate at Candlestick Park. So it was really cool. It was fun. And of course, going to Wrigley Field is always a great experience. Every time I go there, it's just a fun place to hang out before, during, and after game.
All right, let's go back a little bit. I'm more of a two-dimensional person. I can root for the National and American League. So some are not. But let's talk about this. Now you're a senior, and talk about some of the um, people that helped you at USF decide, because you're getting ready to graduate. So what the heck are you going to do? And how in the world did you end up in law?
Uh, That's interesting, and it's hard for me to tell you how I went there. But my brother, who always, he was always pushing me to do better at St. Ignatius and at USF. I think he was always a serious student. He's a physician, and I just had, for most of my high school career and maybe through halfway of my college career, I thought I was going to become a professional baseball player. And all the organizations felt otherwise, but so I did study. I got good grades at USF, and I decided I'd try law school. And I took the what they call the LSAT, which is the admissions test, and then I got into Santa Clara and I got into USF, and that was a pretty easy decision to make. I was going to just go to USF, and it's been a good career for me. I think what I do, I work for mainly insurance companies, and I do their defense work, and with the raising 5 kids, and they're all involved in sports and other activities. I was allowed some flexibility to take them to practices, coach them, and also watch their games and stuff like that, which is really important to me.
Hey, Beck, can you talk about when did you know, and kind of who, you said your brother, but did you know some attorneys? Were there some relatives? Were there friends? Were you excited about it? Did you watch Perry Mason? I mean, how did you make that decision?
No, I didn't watch Perry Mason. I just I couldn't follow those storylines. But I think there's a Jesuit at USF who Father Jim Shaw. He taught a political philosophy class, and we had these. We had to do a lot of reading, like Thucydides, Plato, Aristotle, St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas. And the class was like at 8:00 in the morning. It was just kind of a grind for me. But Father Shaw, he kind of encouraged me to, I was a political science major, so that was kind of like a lot of people that are interested in law and kind of major in that, especially at USF. It was called government major at the time. But he encouraged me. He encouraged me to, study for the LSAT and apply law school. And he wrote a really good letter of recommendation to the law schools that I applied to. And he was probably the most persuasive teacher I had at USF to go to law school was Father Jim Shaw. He was a great guy. He ended up teaching at Georgetown for a long time after he left USF. And I read about a year ago that he had passed away down at the Jesuit Center down in Los Gatos.
Man, talk about your first job out of law school.
My first job out of law school was I was working for a personal injury law firm in Chicago, and I did that for about 2 years. I got some experience having jury trials, but after about 2 years, I moved on to work for Fowler's Insurance Company and doing their defense work in Chicago. And I think it was there that I realized that working for an insurance company was good for me and for my family because, like I said before, it's just kind of it allowed me to the flexibility I needed to kind of raise my kids and make sure that they make their appointments, their practices and things like that. Because my wife at the time was, she was working as well, and so we kind of had to have a pretty good balance of our schedules. But I enjoyed trying cases, though. It's they're a real pain to prepare for, but once you wrap it up and you're doing your closing arguments and it's getting near the end, it's always kind of exciting to hope that the the result you get from the jury is what you were asking for. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes they give more, a lot more than what you want to give as when you're defending cases. And so pretty much I've been in the insurance defense industry, just working for insurance companies. That's what I've been doing pretty much my whole career, Bill, was that.
Hey, Matt, talk about now. I have 4 kids myself, and I know that you have your kids who some are in school right now still. And talk about the different pressures that they would have as opposed to when you were in school.
Oh yeah, it's such a different ballgame now. I think, especially in terms of academics. I mean, when my kids, their first day of school, of high school, I mean, the teachers and the administration, whatever high school they attended, they want to get the idea of getting into a good college. You know, yeah, you should take advanced placement classes. And just from that, you got to plan out your 4 years in high school. Whereas even though I went to St. Ignatius, I think it was less. It was less. I guess it just wasn't as scheduled as that was now. So the whole thing about college is, um, uh, back then, the boys from my high school, like I said, most of them went to USF or Santa Clara. Nowadays, St. Ignatius, they're sending their kids all over the country to different colleges and stuff like that. And I think the social aspect of it too. I think we had a lot less things to worry about
Social
back
media.
in the day. I mean, back in the day, I mean, it's just most of the stuff was word of mouth, just about parties or whatever. And I think, but now with the idea or the realization of like instant information, I think these kids they're just there's just a tremendous amount of pressure through Facebook or Instagram or all those other social media outlets to either express themselves or uh, think or try to keep up with what they see on those those social media portals about what they should be or what they should look like or how they should think. So tremendous amount of pressure, nowadays. And sports too. I mean, sports is you're playing any sport nowadays in high school. You have to think about hiring coaches to assist your kid in improving their game, be it basketball, shooting, or dribbling, or rebounding, or whatever. It's the same with baseball or soccer or football. I think it's just everything's out in the open now with these kids. They're just getting all this information, and they're getting all of these things on social media about how they should be, or how they should look like. So I think just academically and socially, I think the kids nowadays are just under tremendous pressure, more so than we were back in the day.
I agree. It's and we always say that, yeah, back in our day, but there is a lot more pressure just because of the social media. There's a lot more pressure because there's a lot more organization. I think the kids are they're trained better. They're a lot smarter. Um, Academically, I know our kids here at USF are off the charts. Um, but individually, with where you and I would play with each other without a coach, they're really orchestrated, and it's an interesting concept. And I think just a little bit of a lack of imagination. Um, so it's just a really really interesting time. Hey, Matt, can you talk about your you mentioned it, but talk about your family a little bit.
Sure. I've got I have a brother and sister. Brother lives in Alameda. My sister lives in San Francisco. And I have 5 kids. The oldest is 34. She's a lawyer in Chicago. And Margaret, and then Bridget is second oldest. She's in New York. She did the Jesuit thing. She went to Holy Cross in Massachusetts. And then Patrick's in Chicago. Mary Claire, the one that attended Michigan, she lives in Brooklyn. And then my youngest Billy he's a senior at DePaul in Indiana, not DePaul, DePaul University in Indiana. So he should be finishing up this year. And I'll be working for a while because
you got a lot of kids.
Education. And if they go to public colleges, they have to pay out-of-state tuition. So they just find ways for me to deplete my savings right now. But so they're all doing good. You know, my oldest has a grandson, and so I'm a grandfather, and yeah, they're all doing good. You know, they all are up there, and they're pretty much self-sufficient, which is a good thing. And they're responsible kids, and that's all I want them to be. You know, is happy, responsible kids, and that's what they are. So yeah, so that's those are the kids. They all play different sports. Billy, the youngest, played ball at New Trier High School up in what they call the North Shore in Chicago, and he was planning on pitching at DePaul. It's a Division III school, but he decided not to. I think he just wanted to study and just kind of enjoy college life, because you know, like sports in college now, it's a year-round commitment. You know, for any sport that you play. That wasn't necessarily so back in the day. You know, so but he's enjoying school, and he'll be getting out in May or June.
Well, Pat, I'm looking forward to hopefully this summer you could come back and we can visit a little bit, and maybe
Certainly.
at the same time with your brother Dan, who I've talked to and never spent any time with him, so maybe we can come back and watch a Don's game and do something. But
definitely. Again with this COVID thing, I don't know. I mean, I have nothing. And I guess I wouldn't want to go to San Francisco or to California right now with the restrictions they have. So I think I just have to wait. I think I have to wait it out for travel and everything. So I think, but I will. I'd love to get together and bring my brother out and meet you, because he'd love to meet you.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're definitely overdue it. Pat, thank you so much for being on the
Thanks,
show.
Bill.
Awesome.
That's great.
And like I said, we'll get together really soon.
Okay. All right, Bill. Thanks. Okay. Have a nice New Year, both of you. Nice meeting you, Steve.